is a bad idea. 8,000 people marched against the war today in Frankfurt, 25,000 in Milan, 35,000 in Barcelona. We are joined by two American dissenters, Barbara Ehrenreich, writer and columnist here in New York, and Stephanie Atkinson, who refused orders to go to Saudi Arabia with her reserve unit. She's at WCAU in Philadelphia. Thank you both for joining us. Miss Atkinson, I should explain to folks that that shirt of yours says "Out Now." I take it you took part in a demonstration today.
Yes, I did, in Philadelphia.
Why did you do what you did? Why did you leave your reserve outfit?
I felt that this was a matter of conscience, and I had to determine what I really believed and what I really supported, and it came to a moment where I decided that I could not be in a situation where I would be provoked to kill anyone. I believe that killing, war, violence in all forms is morally wrong.
So you became a conscientious objector.
Yes, that's correct.
Any regrets about your outfit being over there and you being here safe?
I feel remorse at that I may lose some friends. I miss them and I wish them safety, and I wish that they were home. I don't wish that I was there. I just wish that they were not.
Ms. Ehrenreich, you've been an anti-war activist for some time. What do you have against this war?
Well, it's hard to think of a defense for this war. It's hard to think of a good rationale for it. The president tried a number of rationales out on us, and it was for oil, it was for jobs, it was for democracy. None of them really worked. None of them really held water. I mean, there's not a rationale for this as a war. Yes, Saddam Hussein has to get out of Kuwait. First, George Bush proposed sanctions. Sanctions were working. And then there seemed to be almost a relentless drive to war.
Ms. Atkinson, if you could say anything you want to President Bush tonight, what would it be?
Listen to the people. I think that I and other resistors and the American voice is saying that we don't want a war. There's no reason for our people to be there. I don't think that the way that you earn the world's respect is to wave a big gun. I think that the way to earn the world's respect is to take care of your citizens.
Ms. Ehrenreich, you said Saddam Hussein must leave Kuwait. Do you really mean it? Do you think that he might prove to be a great danger to the world someday if he remains in power?
Well, there are many bad guys in the world who could eventually prove to be a great danger. But the analogy I keep thinking of was that 13 months ago, it was George Bush who invaded a small country to his south, right, and was censured by the United Nations, and it was called a flagrant violation of international law. Imagine if at that point some other big power in the world decided to bomb the United States to punish us for that action. Mm-hmm. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, right, what we're doing now. We have nothing. I don't think the American people have anything against the people of Iraq. We feel that they're oppressed by a terrible dictator. And yet, what fills my heart with dread right now is that we are about to bomb them. There's no such thing as a surgical strike. There would be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of civilian deaths. And I think that's what makes us sick, so many of us around this country tonight. It is not going to make us feel bigger and stronger to beat Iraq, which will, be all too easy. And the deaths will hang on our conscience forever unless we can stop this war.
Ms. Ehrenreich, Ms. Atkinson, thank you both for joining us.
Thanks.
Two of thousands of people who were out in the streets today protesting this war. We'll all be right back.
Cleaning toilets is a lousy job, so I invented 2000 Flushes Blue to help you. It's loaded with detergents, cleans and deodorizes automatically. Up to 4 months. Try my 2000 Flushes Blue or green. Cleans your toilet with every flush.
I'll never get through tomorrow. I don't get some Z's.
Introducing single-dose maximum strength Nitol. Just one will help you fall fast asleep fast. New maximum strength Nitol. Just one Nitol will help you get a lot of Z's.
Introducing Glade Plug-ins Air Freshener. It keeps
on freshening. And freshening.
And freshening.
Plug it in, plug it in. New Glade Plug-ins freshens for 30 days.
Plug it in, plug it in.
Gently, constantly warms this refill cartridge for a full 30 days.
Freshens 30 days, freshens out of your way. Plug it in, plug it in.
After 30 days, just pop in a refill. Try Glade Plug-ins and plug into 30-day freshness.
Plug it in.
The people of CBS News. Dan Rather,
Connie Chung,
Mike Wallace,
Bob Schieffer,
Ed Bradley,
Leslie Stahl,
Morley Safer,
and Charles Kuralt. Experience
CBS News.
Showdown in the Gulf. Americans at home, on the front line, and on alert. What's next? Dan Rather anchors a special edition of 48 Hours Wednesday.
Stay with us for more America Tonight.
Seriously now, is this any way to sell something? Here I am, stuck on this page, surrounded by my competition. You probably haven't even found me yet. Well, that's Yellow Pages for you. The fact is, these books just sit there unopened 99% of the time, and when they do get open, it's usually by somebody just looking for a phone number. It's probably not a bad idea to list your name in the Yellow Pages, but you ought to sell your product on television. And give your prospects a reason to open the book.
I miss the kids. I wish we could see them more often.
At Morris, we feel the good times should be shared.
It's too expensive to fly to California as often as you'd like to. It's just not practical.
Oh, there must be a way.
Everyone knows that Morris has low fares to California. But with our 1 + 1 = $49 special, a second person can share a flight for just $49 each way.
Thanks, Morris.
Morris Air Service, bringing people together.
Lead to a heart attack or stroke. Risks like smoking and ignoring high blood cholesterol and doing nothing about high blood pressure. Combine 2 or 3 of these and your chances are even worse. Why take chances? Quit smoking, lower your cholesterol, and watch that high blood pressure. That heart attack or stroke may never happen.
Looking ahead, now that the deadline has passed, in Baghdad, Iraqis woke up this morning to a radio broadcast, a repeat of a Saddam Hussein address warning that his army is ready for war and that there would be no compromise. With diplomacy apparently exhausted, world leaders made urgent appeals to Iraq to prevent war. Egyptian President Mubarak said, in the name of every father and mother, Iraq should leave Kuwait. We don't know if President Bush read his horoscope on deadline day, but it said, face obstreperous individual and refuse to be intimidated.
Well, at midnight Eastern Standard Time, a little while ago, we tore away the calendar page that said January 15 and passed in that instant from a safe, familiar time into a dangerous and unknowable one. Everybody in the world watched the moment approach with a kind of dread. The last message of the Secretary General of the United Nations to Saddam Hussein began, as 15 January advances and the world stands poised between peace and war, the Foreign Minister of France said late in the day, the fatal moment arrives. A GI in Saudi Arabia, Captain Clint Essery from Indianapolis, said, in our minds, the training stops now, the war starts. We have watched this midnight coming, and now it has passed. The remorseless passage of time, which we usually are too busy to think about, is an ancient theme in the Persian Gulf. A Persian, Omar the tent maker, composed an epigram for this breathless night nearly 1,000 years ago. The bird of time has but a little way to fly, and lo, the bird is on the wing.
And indeed he is, Charles. As we leave you at this hour, the men and women of CBS News Worldwide are standing by to bring you reliable, responsible, and steady coverage, day or night, of developments in the Gulf and to do their best to explain them. Night Watch will be coming up on many of these CBS stations. There'll be the CBS Morning News. Then Harry Smith and Paula Zahn will be here with CBS this morning. We'll have the CBS Evening News tomorrow night, of course, and we hope you'll make a mental note, a special edition of 48 Hours about the Gulf tomorrow night. That'll be at 8 o'clock, 7 in the Central Time Zone, and we'll have other special coverage when warranted. Good night, Charles.
Good night, Dan. Good night, Leslie.
Night, gentlemen. Night, everyone.
All right, how many this time? 8. Cavities? 14 cavities? I didn't think I had that many teeth. They're gonna have to drill? My parents will be very upset.
Parents today hope their kids won't have to go through what they went through. Luckily, today's kids use the toothpaste more dentists recommend, Crest. The first toothpaste clinically shown to give you protection down to the root of the tooth.
Another great checkup. Yes! Woo, woo, woo. Later, dude.
Crest, the dentist choice, is the easy choice.
It's been fun.
I meet this old friend. She looks great. So I get motivated. I join the health club, but I can't get with the program. I feel so low energy from this irregularity. But then it hits me. To get in shape on the outside, you have to get in shape on the inside. So I started taking Metamucil. It's a natural soluble fiber, the extra fiber I needed. No harsh chemicals, safe enough to take daily. So now I'm with the program, inside and out.
Metamucil. It can make a daily difference in how you feel.
The people of CBS News. Dan Rather.
Connie Chung.
Ed Bradley.
Charles Kuralt.
Charles Osgood.
Paula Zahn.
Mark McEwen.
Harry Smith.
And Mike Wallace.
Experience.
CBS News.
Showdown in the Gulf. Americans at home, on the front line, and on alert. What's next? Dan Rather anchors a special edition of 48 Hours Wednesday.
Stevens Skin Softener gets glowing reports from doctors, nurses, and pharmacists.
I recommend this product frequently and use it myself.
This is the best skincare product I've tried on my patients.
I wash my hands about 30 times a day. Stevens keeps them from getting too dry.
Stevens Skin Softener is a breakthrough in skin care. A rich concentrated cream guaranteed to provide more relief than any lotion for all types of dry, itchy, and cracked skin.
It keeps my hands softer longer than any lotion I've tried.
Stevens works very well for cracked, calloused feet. Our patients are very enthusiastic about Stevens Skin Softener.
Stevens provides more relief than any lotion, guaranteed. And its unique hypoallergenic formula contains no lanolin, artificial dyes, fragrances, or petrochemicals. So it's soft on every body. Healthcare professionals praise Stevens. You will too.
Stevens Skin Softener is available at stores and pharmacies throughout Utah. Call toll-free for locations near you.
For a printed transcript of this broadcast, send $4 to America Tonight Transcript, Box 7, Livingston, New Jersey, 07039.
Later on Night Watch, standoff in the Persian Gulf crisis. The deadline is here. Is there any path left other than war? That story and more on CBS News Night Watch.
This is CBS.
Is your child protected for the future? Gerber, the baby people you've known since you were an infant, offers you a way to help with that protection through their Grow Up Plan for Children. It's a $5,000 cash value insurance program that costs less than 11 cents a day. At age 21, that protection doubles to $10,000 with absolutely no increase in premiums. The Gerber Life Grow Up Plan is a fund that grows with your children and will provide that extra cash when they need it. In addition to automatically doubling at age 21, the plan also guarantees the right to $50,000 of insurance by age 28, regardless of health or occupation. So call now for your free information package. Any child under 13 years of age is eligible. No medical examination is necessary. Simply answer a few questions. As a special feature, your first month's premium is $1. The Gerber Life Grow Up Plan, an investment in your child's future to show that you care. Call now.
Call 1-800-543-1200. The information package is free. There is no obligation. The number again is 1-800-543-1200. Call now.
Turn to the news specialist tonight at 6.
Exciting and new. Come aboard.
15th as the deadline by which the Iraqis would have to withdraw all of their troops from Kuwait, or war could, or the use of power, could be sustained. That is where we are right now, within minutes of that deadline approaching, and we want to begin by going to some of the key points around the world as we approach that critical deadline. First to the White House, where ABC's Britt Hume is standing by, and the White House, Britt, looks exceedingly dark. Why is that?
Well, Ted, the impression here today was that the president, if not indifferent to all of this, which he certainly is not, was at least taking this in stride. He was said to be planning to go to bed tonight to allow the deadline to pass without any special observations from him. And people here are no doubt working in the White House tonight, but the press office is closed and all the public activities that one might expect to see on a big occasion are not present.
Now, we can, of course, already hear some voices raised behind you in protest, I guess more accurately in front of you in Lafayette Park. Can you describe for us what is in front of you?
Yes, I can, Ted. There's a combination of candlelight vigil and a rather more noisy protest across the street. There's been a drumbeat that has been going on now for nearly 2 days, 24 hours around the clock, accompanied by chants of peace now and no blood for oil. The participants that I was able to see as I came in here tonight, Ted, were mostly youthful, or at least, if not youthful, certainly appearing to be active young people who many of them may be students.
We'll be talking again a little bit later in the program, Brett, but I just wanted to ask you one more comment on the darkened White House behind you. Should we infer from that that it is not likely that the war will begin tonight?
I think it is not likely that it would begin tonight, Ted. After all, it is daytime in Iraq now, and I think that the general thinking has been that nighttime, given the technological advantages that the United States and allied forces possess for that kind of fighting, would make nighttime a more propitious time for any assault. Moreover, I think the president is probably still hoping, in fact, I'm confident he is still hoping for some last-minute change of heart by Saddam Hussein, perhaps saying that after all he's faced down the deadline and it was only a paper deadline, and now in the interest of peace he will do something. I don't think anybody here tonight is going to bet anything on that, but I don't think the hope is quite died either, Ted.
Brett, we'll be coming back to you a little bit later in the broadcast, but let us go now to Baghdad. We do not have a live television picture from Iraq right now, but ABC's Gary Shepard is standing by in the Iraqi capital. A word picture, if you would, Gary, of what it looks like as dawn breaks over Baghdad and what the mood is in that city.
Good morning, Ted. As dawn breaks here, it is absolutely fogged in. There is a pea soup fog covering Baghdad this morning. We can see absolutely nothing out of the window of our hotel here. This happened to much the same degree yesterday. It's a characteristic of this time of the year. So nothing visible. As far as the mood is concerned, it is very quiet. Last night, before everyone went to bed, the city was in a rather normal condition. Traffic was moving, etc., except that military roadblocks had been set up about mid-evening. Roadblocks, we were told, to check for the possibility of military deserters trying to leave the city and get away from their units.
Less than 25 minutes now, Gary, until that midnight deadline. And when I say midnight, I mean, of course, midnight Eastern time in the United States. Any sense of that deadline, any feeling that something is about to happen as seen from your vantage point in Baghdad?
The official government position here, Ted, is more of the same hard line that we've been hearing for months and months. The official chief government spokesman here last evening put it this way, quote, "We are not looking for initiatives. We are fully prepared for confrontation. We shall teach the Americans a lesson." And last evening as well, that being a couple of hours ago, Radio Baghdad broadcast a report that Saddam Hussein himself, on the 15th of January, had toured all of the frontline areas along the Kuwait-Saudi border and the Iraq-Saudi border. He had conferred with his military commanders to make sure they were prepared, and Radio Baghdad announced that Iraq is ready for anything. That seems to be the prevalent mood here today officially. On the
all right, Gary,
other side
if you can hear me, let me just jump in for a moment, because we will be coming back to you indeed as the midnight deadline passes. But there are a couple of other locations we want to check in on just before we move on. First, at the United Nations. You can see, while the building is lit up, in point of fact, there is very little activity at the United Nations tonight. Today, the Secretary General of the UN, Perez de Cuellar, made one last frantic appeal to Saddam Hussein to pull his forces out of Kuwait, but there is now a sense that most, if not all, of the diplomatic initiatives, some of which originated in that building, some of which originated in other parts around the world, that those initiatives are now dead and that the diplomatic hopes are few and far between. And that, in turn, has fueled a sense of futility in many cities around the United States, where some citizens are exercising their right not only of dissent, but also expressing the views of their consciousness and their conscience. In Des Moines, Iowa, for example, there is a small demonstration going on. We are showing you a live picture even now from Des Moines. I'm told that only a couple of hundred people, mostly young people, mostly university people, college people, are gathered there in a candlelight vigil. And out in California, from California State University in Turlock, California, you can also see another part teach-in, part candlelight vigil. So around the United States, there is this sense that an important moment is about to pass as we approach midnight, but no sense of any imminent action. Here in Amman, as you can see, it is also just past dawn. We are moving now to 20 to 7 in the morning. The great concern here is this is a country that is trapped between Iraq on one border, Israel on the other border, and the fear is that if those two nations go to war, that Jordan will be pulled almost beyond itself into that war. So the forces are at the highest level of alert here. But again, it is peaceful here this morning. We are going to take a break now. When we come back, we'll be going to Saudi Arabia, and we'll be talking to experts around the country and around the world. Back in a moment. And 15,000 U.S. troops in the region, and an incredible armada of ships, and of course over 1,000 warplanes. With a report now on the latest buildup and where things now stand, my colleague in Saudi Arabia, Forrest Sawyer.
Pictures of a war machine shifting into high gear.
You can really see a change this past week.
On the ground and in the air, troops are moving north toward Kuwait to the battlefield, while new forces still arrive from the States.
I volunteered to come here. I felt that this is where I want to be. If the country needs us to take care of what we need to do.
The most destructive array of military power ever assembled is poising to strike.
No question in my mind at all that we're going to really kick some butt. We're going to do real well.
The point of the spear, the F-15 Eagle, the match of any fighter in the air. These planes will be among the first to challenge the Iraqis. They've trained to return to base only for fast pit stops.
We can probably reload an airplane, fuel him, and get him back in the air quicker than you can change the oil in your car.
If the U.S. begins the war, it will be launched from this airbase, from others like it throughout the region, and from the decks of U.S. carriers. One more sign the deadline has arrived. The already stringent security at all these installations has been tightened even further.
Nobody really talks about it that much, but they're just really stressed out about it and scared. People are scared because you don't really know what's going to happen. You can't tell.
Clear the P! Be clear! On the last day before the deadline, the 82nd Airborne armed their Apache helicopters and scrawled notes on the Hellfire missiles they hope will save American lives.
It's just our little message to Iraq, letting them know that we're ready to do whatever we're called upon to do.
Those untrained in war are preparing too, learning how to survive chemical attacks and stocking supplies for an uncertain future. Only a few have simply packed up and headed for the hills. This morning, as the clock raced toward the brink, eastern Saudi Arabia was quiet. The air was cold and clear. There was no sign of a gathering storm. Forrest Sawyer, ABC News, Eastern Saudi Arabia.
And once again, we are reporting to you live from Amman, Jordan, where it is just before 7 o'clock in the morning, coming up to the midnight deadline Eastern Time in the United States. Standing by now at the Pentagon is ABC's Pentagon correspondent, Bob Zelnick. And joining us from Norman, Oklahoma, is the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, now an advisor and consultant to ABC News, Admiral William Crow. Bob, just first of all, give me a sense of mood at the Pentagon. Is it as quiet and as dark there as over at the White House?
Well, Ted, in fact, the lights are burning brightly at the Pentagon tonight, but most of them belong to networks who've showed up in the press room here to report on a war which apparently is not going to begin, at least during the next several hours. The parking lots are relatively empty. The press offices were closed hours ago. We were able to reach a number of Pentagon and other senior administration officials at their homes tonight. I don't think they would be at their homes were this war imminent in terms of starting in the next several hours.
When you and I were talking on the phone about an hour or so ago, you were telling me, however, of a conversation that you had with some Navy officer many months ago, long before it seemed as though we would come to this point. I wonder if you'd tell me about that conversation.
Yeah, back in late August or early September, I asked a senior Navy official, uniformed official, what would be the clearest sign that we were about to launch an attack against Iraq. And he said that probably the biggest sign would be when 2 aircraft carriers moved into the Persian Gulf. He said one of them we might send in there as a test, but as you know, the waters are narrow, they're not comfortable in there, the waters are shallow, they're vulnerable to missiles. But if we send 2 of them in there, they can operate around the clock, 12 hours at a time, then that crew will stand down and the other aircraft carrier will take over and conduct operations. Well, today, there had been 1 aircraft carrier, the Midway in the Persian Gulf, and today a second one, the Ranger, passed through the Straits of Hormuz into the Gulf. A second sign, of course, today, Ted, the movement of a squadron of B-52 bombers from Diego Garcia to the Mideast, and that certainly cuts down the travel time and increases the number of sorties they can fly.
Admiral Crow, to a certain extent, I guess we're at that stage for our poker players in the audience where the pot has been growing now. Both sides are acting as though they have a pat hand. But given those 2 carriers, given the B-52s, given the sense of imminent war in the Persian Gulf, how long can that kind of thing be sustained?
I don't really know the answer, Ted, but I would think that we are right on the brink of war. And I appreciated Bob's remarks. When you start frustrating the Pentagon press, and also when you send 2 carriers in, those are truly ominous signs.
Well, you know, because we are coming quite literally up to that point where the midnight deadline is passing, it's inevitable that people are going to be looking at that. And then as the hours and the days pass, there may be a certain feeling of letdown. When you say that we are on the brink of war, are you speaking in terms of days or are you speaking in terms of hours?
I would think in somewhere between those 2.
Give us a sense of
probably in just 1 or 2, 3 days.
Give us a sense of what has to happen. In other words, how do you crank up a force of 415,000? I'm only speaking now of the Americans. You've got more than 200,000 other allies in the coalition. How many hours does it take to take them from the moment that the president gives the order to the moment that combat is initiated?
I think the crank-up period you're referring to, most of it has already been done. We're in the latter stages of that, and when the final order comes, they will already be on the step. The period of delay would be very short.
Would it be accurate at this point, Bob Zelnick, to suggest that we are not going to see action on the ground even when the war begins?
Oh, I think that's quite accurate. In fact, I think the commanders in the field in Saudi Arabia have lost their argument with the White House to wait until the Stage 2 buildup is essentially completed and the forces not only deployed, but have had a chance to acclimate and work up some exercises. I think that the movement that we're seeing toward war now indicates that the U.S. intends to rely on air power and air power alone for a period of days or weeks, and that there's a belief among many that air power alone will be decisive, not that it will entirely obviate the need for a ground campaign, but that the ground campaign will involve minimal casualties and minimal risks for the United States. And I must add, in all candor, that that is not a view that's universally shared even by strategists within this building. There are some who believe that we're putting too much reliance on air power, that we've done it in the past and it hasn't worked, and that the belief is very strong that air power will be so decisive that it will not only do the things militarily that air power does, but that it will break the will of the Iraqis, that it will make them speechless, that it will terrify them, that they will have little to do but run around looking for Americans to surrender to. And if this view prevails, the war will be short and successful. If it does not prevail, it'll be much longer and much more tricky getting out.
Bob, you've led us in the direction of another one of our specialists. Joining us tonight, General Bernard Traynor. He is a retired Marine Corps general. I believe he's joining us from Boston. I think to a certain degree what Bob has been saying reflects some of your own views, General Traynor, namely that you can't do it with air power alone. Your belief, sir?
Well, I'd like to hope that we could do it with air power, but let's face it, Ted, most of the coverage of this potential conflict has been from our side, what we are going to do, how we're going to do it, and how long it's going to take. But as the Secretary General of the United Nations mentioned, it takes two to tango, and the other partner in this tango happens to be the Iraqis. Now, the Iraqis are led by a very competent military leadership. They know our capability, they know what our air power can do, and they've had 5.5 months to work out some sort of a strategy to compensate for that. Now, I would like to think that our air power could crack them very quickly, but I don't think it will. I think it's going to be an essential element of whatever we do, but the fact is that the Iraqis know how they want to fight this war, and they're going to fight it in a way that, in a large measure, insofar as they can, will neutralize our air power or minimize the effect upon their dug-in forces.
General Traynor, I left out one key element in your background, namely that you have worked with the Iraqi military. You have spent time in that country. Give us your assessment of how they will respond to what will, I would suggest to you, is the first time that they have been exposed to Western air power of the kind that is available to the United States and its allies.
Well, it's going to come as a shock to them, but they know what we're capable of. But their basic strategy, as near as I can determine from the dispositions that they've made in Kuwait and in southern Iraq, is basically along the lines of the strategy that they used against the Iranians. Therefore, they will be in very strong fixed fortifications, and they will depend upon these fortifications to protect their troops insofar as they can, and they will also depend upon those fortifications to slow down an enemy attack, and they will couple that with their heavy artillery fire to damage the attacking forces. This is what they're experienced in. They've developed the techniques, and air power is going to certainly disturb them, and it's certainly going to inflict terrible casualties on them, but I'm not so sure that air power is going to break their back, because they have taken this into account and they have prepared for it. The Iraqis are prepared to fight, and it will be a difficult fight.
Admiral Crow, let me just come to you for a quick 30 seconds. We'll be back with you a little bit later. There is always the intimation from Iraq, from Baghdad, that there may be some surprise, a military surprise in store. Any idea of what that could be?
No, I don't, Ted, and I'm sure that there might be some. If I could add to the discussion you just had, I don't think we should make too much out of this argument over air power. It's healthy that there are arguments raging in the Pentagon, nothing abnormal about that. The fact that this campaign is going to be initiated with air attacks does not mean that we necessarily have to rely on them to win the war. We will assess as we go along. We have great flexibility, and if that doesn't achieve our objectives, we will then go to other methods and means.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we will go to our correspondents in Washington and in Saudi Arabia as the midnight deadline approaches.
What we're going to see now, Ted, is that the safety is off the trigger as far as the military is concerned. Those fighters are going to start dancing along the Kuwaiti border. They're going to start testing the Iraqi radar. The Iraqis have made some significant advances in some technologies. They want to see what kind of radar they're going to light up their planes with. They want to know what they're going to be up against when they finally do lead that airstrike.
Forrest, even as you and I are speaking right now, technically, President Bush could launch the attack against Iraq at any time. It is now past midnight, and that UN resolution goes into effect. I would like you, if you would, and I know you're not going to be able to show it to us, but I've been told that that air base in Saudi Arabia is something truly phenomenal, both in terms of its size and in terms of the number of aircraft that can take off and land simultaneously. Would you talk about it a little bit?
Well, when you go out there, they have what is called the flight line. And as you look down this array where the planes are parked, you see these huge C-5 transport planes, one lined up along with the other. And then in a further line, you have Saudi fighter planes, British fighters, you have American F-15s. It is an awesome array of firepower that they have at this single airport, Ted. And this is only one of the airports from which they're going to launch those strikes. They're going to be from Turkey. There's an air base in Bahrain. And of course, the B-52s will be coming from Diego Garcia. It is an astonishing array of firepower that will be launched in that first strike, something the world has never seen before.
Bob Zelnick at the Pentagon, we keep hearing that the Iraqis are going to be absolutely astonished by modern weapons, the impact of which they just don't understand. Try and explain to us, for example, with the cruise missiles, what kind of an impact do those cruise missiles make that is different from the sort of conventional air bombing that those of us who were in Vietnam, for example, or others in Korea, or even during the Second World War would be familiar with?
Well, Ted, the principal difference between the cruise missiles and many of the other weapons that the U.S. will be launching and those with which we're both familiar, and to some extent the Iraqis familiar, is the advances in target acquisition and in accuracy. Some of the figures that the Air Force provides on this are absolutely startling, that the circular error of probability has been reduced to the point, the accuracy has been improved to the point where a single bomb dropped today from a modern warplane does as much damage to the intended target on the average as 12,000 bombs dropped in World War II. A single F-15 Eagle packs as much lethality today because of these improvements in accuracy as an entire squadron of bombers in the Second World War. Now, as you know, in Vietnam, accuracy was a problem because the U.S. didn't know where the enemy was, just the general area. Against a conventional force whose desert locations are well known, that is not the same kind of problem. Now, you take a cruise missile, this thing can travel 700 miles, maybe even more than that. It has the target and a map of how to get to the target programmed into its computer. It passes through ground defenses, which would bring down other aircraft. It has a much higher kill probability. Nothing about this is familiar to the Iraqis based upon their 8-year war with Iran. And in fact, the Iraqis themselves had vast air superiority throughout that war and were unable to make any real use of it on the battlefield for most of that war.
All right, Bob Zelnick, thank you very much. One observation, it is now 4 minutes past 12 o'clock. As I said, technically the deadline has now passed. Technically the president can launch some of those incredible forces that we have been hearing about at any time. There is perhaps one last hope that needs to be raised. And that is here in the Middle East, some Arabs have been raising the possibility that Saddam Hussein did not want to appear to be knuckling under to that very deadline, and that possibly he was going to try and wait a day or two and then perhaps offer some kind of a compromise proposal. No way of knowing, of course, whether he will have that day or two, no way of knowing whether he will take advantage of the time if it becomes available. But we'll be taking a look at some of the reaction out here in the Middle East, some dissent back in the United States, and more. We'll be visiting with some other specialists back in Washington when we return in a moment.
Okay, you're trying to decide between the Jeep Cherokee and the Isuzu Trooper. Let's weigh the facts, shall we? The Isuzu Trooper comes standard with 4-wheel disc brakes and triple skid plates, more cargo space, a larger fuel tank, and more headroom. Oh, one more. The Isuzu Trooper.
Different systems in layers designed to keep the United States from having one countermeasure.
But out of that 700 aircraft that the Iraqis have on these bases, only about 500 of those aircraft are probably fully operational. Only about 100 to 150 are really of high quality, and with our assets, probably right now, we have a very good idea of where those aircraft are. Even though there are 700 surface-to-air missile launchers, they too are in narrow belts. They don't cover the entire country. More than half of them are obsolete systems, and another third of the remainder are very short-range systems which are virtually blind and incapable at night. We're almost certainly locating those systems, as somebody pointed out earlier, probing the radars, probing the systems so we can break the back of that surface-to-air missile and air system as quickly as possible. And breaking
you've referred, Tony, to breaking the radar. What about the issue of trying to jam their systems in any way that we can? Is that usually a prelude to action?
Well, of course, the stealth aircraft do not use that. The cruise missiles do not do that. The key way of breaking the system, as distinguished from the radars, is to attack the major sensor radars, the search and acquisition radars, to hit at the command systems. Then the individual fire units may survive, but the brain and the nervous system of the air defense system is dead. Then we can go to active jamming, to electronic warfare and other measures to actually penetrate in and roll up individual targets, suppress the air bases, destroy the individual major surface-to-air missile sites. And of course, we don't need to destroy all of them. We can get corridors or belts of attack, so the other systems will simply be ineffective. They can't move, they can't redeploy, they can't challenge our aircraft.
Tony, let me, if I may, ask you about what may sound like some rather crude measures, but one has to believe that they would be terribly effective. There have been reports, for example, that the Iraqis have at least 2 super oil tankers in the Gulf, that they are possibly planning to release all of that oil, and that would, of course, represent millions of gallons, set it on fire, and then, not to mention the enormous confusion that that might provoke, it would also end up blocking the desalinization plants, making it difficult for water to get to the troops in Saudi Arabia. We also hear reports about quite literally kamikaze missions, suicide missions that would extend the range of Iraqi aircraft. Talk about those things for a moment.
Well, we can't discount suicide missions or terrorism. Things like that can always happen. However, historically, those have not worked very well against large dispersed land targets. They would almost certainly be more symbolic than real. Terrorism is a different story, but the number of successful terrorist attacks since the end of World War II is virtually negligible when it comes to sophisticated installations. Yes, indeed, they can flood part of the Gulf with oil, but during the Iran-Iraq War, there were major oil slicks in the Gulf, and they didn't really affect operations at all. The currents don't necessarily bring oil down to affect any desalinization plants at all. Further, I think there's sort of a misstatement in a lot of the analysis here. They probably wouldn't burn a lot of that oil in an amphibious landing. They'd try to use it to jam the drive systems of our amphibious craft. But in practice, if you lit the oil from 3 tankers, it's really a very small, very narrow fire looking at the immense area that we really see over here. It's one of those things which sounds terrifying, but really doesn't have the military substance to have great effectiveness.
All right, Tony, thank you very much. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the consequences of war here in the Middle East on the Arab population, and we will discuss the impact of possible terrorist attacks in Europe and in the United States when we come back. There is, of course, the danger of terrorism in the United States and in Europe. In a moment, we'll be hearing a report from James Walker on that. But first, some of the consequences on the ground here in the Arab world, as seen through the eyes of the Arab population. We have a report first from John Donovan.
It is a rare Arab man who admits to fear at the prospect of war. In Amman, Jordan, on January 15th, few were.
No one is afraid, and they do not care about the 15th, and they are ready for this moment.
Here, all people, all Arabs are Saddam Hussein. So, This is why a special day for us and for the world.
Everyone will participate. We will take our role. We will be soldiers with Saddam Hussein.
Words that to Western ears could be taken as a passion for war. The passion that fired the rally this week where Saddam was praised and America cursed. Yet if some here have that passion, there is also a passion for peace. Tonight, the candles were lit at 2 hours to midnight for a peace vigil where Jordanians and Palestinians carried olive branches. Strong passions, considering that Kuwait is more than 700 miles from here. Part of it is that Jordanians, wedged between Iraq and Israel, fear getting caught in the crossfire. But also many Arabs here and elsewhere have come to believe that Saddam Hussein is fighting for all of them against a bully from far away called America. There are some who, for that reason, seem almost to relish the possibility of an all-out war in the Middle East. Muslim fundamentalists, for example.
The West coming to the holy places now with its soldiers and creating now tomorrow maybe a conflict, a military conflict, I think the whole Islamic world is going to revolt. I'm going to be very pleased. I don't mind if half of us, 70% of us would die. Let them start with me. But certainly, whoever is going to stay is going to lead this world to justice.
But there are many others who want to survive, the thousands stocking up on food or following the televised instruction on how to survive an air raid. These are people who do not want war and accuse the U.S. of bringing them one.
I don't think that the Arab world will ever be the same. Again, regardless of whether violence is used or not used. The shock of this day, the deadline, I think will reverberate for a very, very long time to come.
And while it is true that George Bush's coalition includes key Arab leaders like Hosni Mubarak of Egypt and Hafez al-Assad of Syria, that was never a guarantee of support for the U.S. position among Arabs at street level. Now, if there's a shooting war,
there's going to be an intense feeling of rage and of disgust at what it will be seen as a fundamentally American action. And that will manifest itself in increased instability in those states where the governments concerned have been implicated in the current war.
Tonight, Jordan's King Hussein went on television making yet another appeal for peace. Let us use our brains, he said, rather than guns. But at what they called the peace vigil here tonight, people who carried olive branches were also chanting for guns. Contradictions that one young man, a student, tried to explain today like this. Imagine America surrounded, he said, by a huge Arab army poised to attack. Then you'd understand how we Arabs feel. John Donovan for Nightline in Oman.
This is James Walker. 30 hours before the United Nations deadline for Iraq to leave Kuwait, 2 top PLO officials are assassinated in Tunis. Question, is this the opening salvo in the expected surge of terrorism? And who's responsible for the murders? Israel, which denies involvement, or Saddam Hussein, who ABC News has learned had a major falling out with one of the murdered men, Abu Iyad, just last month. His assassin, who is under arrest, has reported ties to terrorist Abu Nidal. Abu Nidal led the massacre of the Vienna and Rome airports in 1985 and is living in Baghdad at the invitation of Saddam Hussein, along with several other terrorists, including Abu Labas, who was involved in the hijacking of the cruise ship Achille Lauro. Indeed, early this month, Saddam alluded to the use of terrorism in this crisis, saying, "The theater of our operations includes every struggler and fighter whose hand can reach to harm aggressors in the whole world." That means a war could affect not only military targets in the desert, but civilian targets in countries opposing Saddam Hussein.
This is unprecedented. We have not been in a war with an opponent that has a terrorist option and potentially a terrorist option as a strategic instrument. This is new for us.
Intelligence experts say an attack, which would most likely take place in the Middle East or Europe because of its relatively easy access, might be carried out not only by terrorists working for Saddam, but also by independent freelancers sympathetic to his cause.
North America is more difficult because you have far more control over the North American continent. Europe also has a hodgepodge of European, Middle Eastern, Islamic, left-wing, right-wing groups all who see this present conflict in different lights and who are willing to give up their lives.
As a result, security has been tightened for U.S. military personnel and their dependents at installations throughout Europe. In Washington, D.C., 29 Iraqi diplomats were expelled from the country, part of the State Department effort to keep Iraq from setting up a terrorist network in the U.S. In an attempt to identify terrorists, the FBI has interrogated leaders of Arab American communities, and it's tracking down 3,000 Iraqis in the U.S. whose visas have expired.
The U.S. government has evidence that terrorists supported by Iraq are planning to mount attacks in most regions of the world.
Security has been beefed up at the nation's airports, at nuclear power plants, and other utilities. Like in many large cities, police in New York have joined with federal authorities in setting up a command center to share intelligence. And President Bush has put Saddam on notice.
We will hold Saddam Hussein directly responsible for any terrorist action.
What worries officials here is that Saddam Hussein has a history of using weapons of terror to achieve his ends, even against his own people. With military analysts saying Iraq is no match for the U.S. on the battlefield, terror tactics may be the only trump card Saddam holds, hoping that by employing them, he can break America's resolve. This is James Walker for Nightline.
And we are back live again from Amman, Jordan, and I am joined by two colleagues now. Pierre Salinger, ABC's chief foreign correspondent, reporting now from London. And here with me in Amman is Judith Kipper, a guest scholar at the Brookings Institution and also a consultant to ABC News. First to Pierre in London. Any hope, Pierre, in the minds of European leaders who have been very active until the last minute that it is still possible to avert Armageddon here?
No, Ted, I think that they have come to the conclusion that all these peace efforts have now collapsed. Even the French, who made a major effort in the last week, have now arrived at the point where their prime minister last night said there is no other solution but to go to war. So the peace initiative seems to have disappeared and is no longer seen as a possible way of solving the crisis.
Judith Kipper, what about one heard continually throughout these past few weeks about the need to give Saddam Hussein the opportunity to save face, and yet one does not get the impression that Saddam Hussein is in the least bit interested in saving face, that there are other things in his mind. Can you give us any kind of insight there?
Well, it's a real catch-22 situation because the face saving might show that in fact there was some willingness to deal on the part of Saddam Hussein. It's ironic that these peace proposals of the last few days have come after 5.5 months and not somewhere along the way, at least to test whether Saddam Hussein would indeed respond. This is a man with nerves of steel. He won't back down, and all he needs to do is stay alive during a war. It's a terrible tragedy coming in this area.
You and I were talking to a consultant, an Arab consultant here in Amman the other day, who was talking about Saddam's perspective on the number of lives that he can afford to lose versus the number of lives that Americans are prepared to lose.
Yes, I think that the Iraqi capacity to withstand losses, because it is a dictatorship, a ruthless totalitarian regime, is much greater than ours. I think it's a very, very difficult balance here between the Iraqis and the Americans, and the whole idea of a coalition, at least in this part of the world, has diminished greatly. It's an Iraqi-American confrontation from the point of view of people here.
Pierre Salinger, pick up a little bit on the theme that James Walker was discussing a few moments ago, the theme of terrorism. You have some incredible sources in that regard. What are the Europeans, for example, saying about the likelihood of an expansion in terrorism, both in Europe and in the United States?
Well, Ted, it's certain that security has gone up very, very high in Europe. Here in Great Britain, we are seeing British troops now surrounding, for example, Heathrow Airport. We have information from our sources that indicates that certain terrorist groups have deployed forces in a certain number of European countries, principally France, Germany, and Great Britain. That they are on alert for the start of the war, and that they are not looking at simple targets like people in the streets or even political leaders, but for a major terrorist attack that could create a worldwide, that would give people the impression that they were successful.
We've always had the feeling, Pierre, that it is more difficult for terrorists to operate in the United States than it is in Europe. What should Americans be looking for?
Well, Americans should be looking. It's interesting. I looked again yesterday at the minutes of the meeting between Saddam Hussein and April Glaspie, the American ambassador to Iraq, on the 25th of July before the invasion of Kuwait. And there is a line which indicates that if a war broke out, we cannot reach America militarily, he says, but there are other ways to reach America, which means that even at that point he was thinking in terms of the possibility of launching some kind of a terrorist attack in the United States, even though that is very complicated, and for the Middle East terrorists has not been successful up to now.
Pierre, thank you. Judith, thank you. We'll be back possibly with both of you a little bit later in the broadcast, but when we return, we'll be taking a look at the mood today on this eve before the deadline occurs of what in the days to come we will come to look upon as the last hours of the pre-war period. There is a growing sense around the world, and of course in the United States, that war now is inevitable. It should go without saying, but ABC News will, of course, give you continuing coverage of this Gulf crisis, and that coverage will not only be continuing, but continual if and when the war begins. We wanted to leave you on this evening after the passage of the UN deadline with a few of the sights and sounds that made up this last day before the deadline expired. I'm Ted Koppel in Amman.
I'm praying an awful lot. We believe that God can intervene.
I'm old enough to remember World War II and Korea and Vietnam and all. And prayer does sustain people.
I wish we didn't have to go to war, but, you know, I'm just scared, that's all.
The Department of Defense is ready to execute any order we might receive from the President.
We're hoping that everything will work out for the best and we get home safe and sound.
It obviously is a moment of considerable gravity for anybody who's involved in government, whether it's the President or those of us in the Defense Department or the members of Congress.
I am going to be praying that someone in the Iraqi army shoots Saddam Hussein in the back, to be honest.
He's the one that started this whole thing, and my dad is over there for no reason. This is a truly very dangerous situation.
We are fully prepared for confrontation. And we shall teach the United States administration a hard lesson.
We are ready, with our allies, to do whatever is necessary to implement the resolutions of the United Nations in full.
Whatever happens, happens. We're all motivated and ready to do what we're here to do.
I don't see any hope, barring a miracle, for a major and extremely destructive war in the Gulf area to be avoided.
Does it frighten you at all?
A little.
This has been ABC News Nightline. If you wish a videocassette version of Nightline, the cost is $14.98, plus $3.95 shipping and handling. If you wish a printed transcript of this or any Nightline broadcast, please send $4 to Nightline Transcripts, 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 10007.
Nightline is a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
This is ABC, home of Super Bowl 25.